What's up, everyone? We are diving back into the multiverse today for another epic. What if Naruto was banished and returned as the Uzumaki Emperor with a Jinchuriki queen? Part 3. If you enjoy this story, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more fanfics like this. Now, let's dive right into the fanfic. Fire Country. Konoha. The sound of an explosion echoed throughout the village hidden in the leaves. Hitaki Kakashi looked up at that and snapped his head in the direction that the sound originated. Smoke blew up into the blue daytime sky and he narrowed his only visible eye when he saw it. I'd better check it out, he thought before he took off towards the blast. He landed on the rooftop of a building and looked down at the street below. Standing there in the center of the street were two figures whom wore black cloaks covered in red clouds, which he immediately identified as Akatsuki agents. What are Akatsuki doing here? Naruto's no longer in Konoha, so why would they openly attack us like this? Kakashi asked in thought as he uncovered his Sharingan. He focused in on the two and his eyes widened as he saw their eyes. Those eyes, that must be the Rinnegan, Pain. One of the two tore off its cloak revealing its body. Kakashi looked on surprised as he saw the figure had fixed arms, three faces and a long razor blade tail sprouting from its back. The main Pain stood back as several more Konoha Chunin and Jonin jumped in to face them. The scorpion-like Pain lunged at the oncoming ninja and proceeded to cut them down as they came. What are they going here? This massacre makes no sense, I have to stop him them, the copy nin as he made several hand seals. Rai Bunshin no Jutsu, another Kakashi appeared at his side and the two jumped down to face the Akatsuki agents. Diva immediately took notice of Kakashi and his clone and sent Asura to intercept. Asura aimed his tail to pierce the original Kakashi, but the clone jumped in the way. Diva's eyes narrowed as the clone exploded in a massive blast of electricity which stunned Asura. Reikiri. Kakashi called out as he slashed through the Asura path like it was made of butter with a fist covered in electricity. Hitaki Kakashi. He created a plan to neutralize the Asura path from just one glance. Impressive, Pain thought as he saw the copy nin streaking towards him with the same lightning-covered hand which sounded frighteningly like the chirping of 1,000 birds. Got him, Kakashi thought as he got within range for a strike. Things didn't go as planned though. Shinra Tensei. Diva whispered. There was a sudden crack followed by the sound of an explosion as Kakashi and everything else within a 10-meter radius was sent hurling away from the Diva path. What was that? That wasn't a shockwave, the copy nin asked in thought as he slammed hard through the wall of destroyed building. He stood up in the rubble and kept his attention on the Diva path who hadn't moved since he last saw him. It felt like I was being pulled backwards by some invisible force. Kuchio's no jutsu. He heard the faint whisper and his eyes widened as he felt the large charge of chakra. He took one look up before he jumped back just in time to dodge the large centipede that landed crashed down on where he had been moments ago. Standing atop the monstrosity was another figure, but this time it looked like a young girl with the same Rinnegan for eyes. Animal Path's eyes bore down on him as the centipede moved to assault the copy nin. This isn't good. Did Jiraiya-sama really fight 6 of these things? Kakashi asked in thought as he saw the summon approach at a frightening speed, all the while destroying everything in its path. Okasho. A blur of pink filled his vision, and when it cleared he saw that the giant centipede had been sent flying backwards. It crashed into the wall beside Diva as Animal dropped down beside him. Kakashi looked to his side when he saw another blur of pink and his eyes widened slightly in surprise at seeing who it was. Sakura. He asked, seeing her keep her eyes on the centipede she had just hit. You shouldn't be here, he told her. I know. I was on my way to the hospital when I saw that thing's charging at you. What the hell's going on anyways? Asked the pink-haired Chunin. I'm not sure why they're here, though I think they're after Naruto, Kakashi stated while keeping his attention on the multi-man Akatsuki member. Naruto? Sakura asked, not getting it. Think about it. Naruto loves Konoha even if he can't return here willingly without getting into trouble. Attacking Konoha is a sure way to get his attention, Kakashi explained. You mean they're using us? Asked the pink-haired Chunin in a near shout. Kakashi nodded in reply, I believe so. Sakura. I want you go the hospital right now. I'll handle things here, you're needed there especially with the increasing casualties from Pain's attack. Sakura nodded and waved as she jumped away. Good luck. Kakashi nodded grimly as he saw the main pain hold up his open hand towards him. Now what? Bansho Tenin, Diva said as Kakashi suddenly felt himself being pulled towards the three peens. He can attract things as well. Now I get it, he's manipulating gravity. The copy nin realized and thought as he threw out a wire which grabbed hold of the nearby post, thus keeping him from falling towards pain. A fully repaired Asura Path stepped forward and bright his arm up towards where Kakashi now stood just as the giant centipede disappeared in a poof of smoke. Now what? Kaiwan no Haya, came the whisper just as Asura's fist shot towards the copy nin. This can't be good, Kakashi thought as he jumped to avoid the hit. Three builds seemed to collapse as the fist slammed into the ground where Kakashi stood a moment ago. Note to self, avoid that at all cost. Kuchio's no jutsu, Animal said as she summoned what looked like a giant rhino. Not again, Kakashi thought as he jumped to avoid the oncoming force of nature. Just then Asura appeared behind him. When did he get so close? The scorpion-like pain grabbed him with one of its many hands and made to pierce him with its tail. Damn, he's got me. Futon. Hein, there was a blur of black and white as the hand which held Kakashi was suddenly cut clean off of Asura's body. Asura pulled away just in time to dodge a large red ball of fire which impacted where he stood a moment ago. Kaden, Gukaku no Jutsu. Just then Kakashi saw Asuma and Ebisu drop down beside him as the Asura Path regrouped with the others. Kakashi sighed in relief at seeing the reinforcements and turned his attention back to the Akatsuki members. Thank God we're not too late, Asuma said. You don't look too good, Kakashi, Ebisu commented seeing the copy nin's condition. This guy is strong. I don't know how Jiraiya-sama could have fought 6 of them like this, Kakashi said as he shook himself trying to calm down. I don't think we should drag this out, the smoking Jonin said as he started making hand seals and the exhaled a large black could of smoke at the Akatsuki members. Kaden. Hisekisho, Asuma exclaimed as he tossed the cigarette he was smoking a moment ago into the cloud. Shinra Tensai. Just as the cigarette ignited the cloud, it was suddenly dispersed in a deafening explosion and left the three pains unharmed. What did he just do? Asuma asked, narrowing his eyes at where his jutsu was used a moment ago. It's the main body's jutsu. He can control gravity to some extent, Kakashi answered. He then continued while not taking his eyes off of the three bodies. It seems he is able to use it for both offensive and defensive strategies. Watch out, Asuma shouted as one of Asura's arms seemed to open and launched a volley of medium-sized missile-like projectiles at them. The three Jonin jumped out of the way, but the missiles seemed to track them. I have to dodge. Explosions littered the streets, creating secondary explosions through several buildings, causing them to collapse. Asuma and Ebisu landed on the upturned ground and tried to balance themselves again. Just then they heard the distinguished thuds of a large creature barreling at them and turned just in time to avoid Pain's summoned rhino which was trying to run them over. When Ebisu got his bearings again, he made several hand seals and exhaled a large ball of fire at the rampaging creature. Kaden, Gukaku no Jutsu. The fireball hit its target, but the rhino appeared to just shrug off the attack like it was nothing. This is no ordinary summoned creature. He turned his attention back to the three bodies of Pain, or should I say two, where's the third one? He got his answer when he suddenly felt something sharp pierce his shoulder from behind. Just as quickly as the blade went in, it was pulled out and he fought the pain just enough to turn around. His assailant, the Diva Path, grabbed him by the neck and lifted him off his feet with shoulder still bleeding. Diva stared at him for a few moments before turning his attention on Asuma. Damn it, the smoker gritted under his breath and dashed for while channeling chakra into his two knives. Futon. Hein, he said as he made to slash the main pain. Diva however saw it coming and lifted his unoccupied arm up towards his attacker and whispered. Shinra Tensai, Asuma's eyes in surprise as he was sent flying backward. He crashed hard into a patch of uplifted ground with a deafening explosion filling the air. Impressive, but you are simply not good enough. Diva looked around searching for the last of the three Jonin but found no one. Where is the copy nin? I know he was here a moment ago. Reikiri. Animal turned quickly as she heard the shout. The moment she did, however, she was suddenly cut down with a fist encased in electricity. That's one down. The rhino disappeared in a poof of smoke thanks to its summoner's defeat, and when he saw this, Kakashi quickly turned his attention towards the Diva path and launched a dog made of lighting at him. Please work. Diva saw it coming and with seemingly little effort tossed the bleeding Ebisu to the side. Yes, he dropped him. Shinra Tensei, Diva whispered as the lightning hound dissipated into the air just as it drew near him. Kaden. Enden, Kakashi called out as he exhaled a large stream of fire at the main pane. Diva dodged to the side, but Kakashi was already in motion and make hand seals as he went. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. 3 shadow clones appeared at his side. One charged straight at Diva, other charged at Asura, and the last dashed towards where Ebisu was tossed to. While this happened, the real Kakashi pushed a massive amount of chakra into his feet and jumped high into the air, which was unnoticed by the 2 peens. The 2 clones that were sent to confront the 2 peens were easily dispatched within moments, however, but Kakashi didn't care as he touched back down right behind Diva. Reikiri, Kakashi whispered as he lunged to pierce the Diva path, knowing that Pain hadn't realized he was there. However, before the attack connected, Diva ducked forward to avoid the attack without even looking at it or him. What? How did he know I was there or that I was attacking him like that? That's when he caught sight of Asura standing off to the side staring at him intently. Can he see me using different bodies? Diva turned swiftly and pulled out one of his chakra disruption blades transmitters. Kakashi didn't have time to react as he suddenly felt the weapon pierce his shoulder and he was pushed back up against a wall. He gritted his teeth in pain, and when he channeled a bit of chakra to free himself, he suddenly felt very cold and could see a pair of shadowed Rinnegan eyes in his vision. What is he doing to me? Kakashi thought as he struggled, but felt more of his strength leaving him with every passing second. Diva suddenly pulled the blade out and stepped back quickly. Now what? Kakashi slumped to the ground and looked up only for his eyes to widen as he saw that Pain's open-palmed arm was extended towards him. Oh no. Shinra Tensei. Pain flooded the copy nin's body as he felt every bone he had crack under the pressure of the attack he was hit with. The ground and the wall he was lying against crumbled under the force of the attack, and after a moment of silence, Pain took a moment to look over his handiwork. Chidori Iso. Pain heard the whisper at the last second and dodged to the side just as a long thin blade of lightning came down on where he stood a moment ago. Diva turned slowly, looking bored at the newcomer. Who are you? Uchiha Sasuke, the newcomer answered simply as he activated his Sharingan. Pain raised an eyebrow slightly. Oh, and what might the brother of Uchiha Itachi be doing in Konoha? Sasuke's eyes flashed at Itachi's name as he glared at the Akatsuki agent. I do not have to explain myself to you. Diva smirked in amusement. You wish to fight me, then come. I wonder how you will compare to your brother. I did defeat him once a very long time ago when he had first joined Akatsuki. Sasuke grunted as his eyes seemed to morph slightly. Mangekyo Sharingan, he whispered as his eyes changed. The Mangekyo Sharingan, huh? Clearly Itachi left you something after all, Pain stated upon seeing the dangerous red eyes. Tsukuyomi, Sasuke whispered as the two locked eyes. I have you now, he whispered as he unsheathed the Kusanagi sword. He slowly stepped forward, seeing that Diva wasn't moving, but stopped when he saw that even after the time had expired that he still hadn't moved. Diva didn't even look fatigued. It was almost like he hadn't been hit by it at all. Sasuke narrowed his eyes for a moment before they widened in realization. Asura appeared from behind him and he jumped to the side, narrowly dodging the long razor-like tail that came at him. Sasuke stopped a few feet away and asked in thought, I know I caught him in Tsukuyomi, so why didn't it crush him mentally? You appear confused, the main Pain stated, observing the seemingly emotionless face of Sasuke. Your ocular genjutsu will not work on me, Uchiha. I am God. I am everywhere, not just in your sight, Diva said with his eyes seeming to bear down upon him. Sasuke glanced between the two peens and thought, he's not one man. That's why Tsukuyomi was ineffective, because he is 6 different people. Just then Asura held out his second right arm at Sasuke and it suddenly opened like it was some kind of machine on the inside. Now what? A large number of missiles launched from his arm and homed in on Sasuke's position. The Uchiha watched as they drew near and suddenly threw a volley of Senbon needles at the oncoming projectiles, piercing them in their noses. Chidori Senbon. The missiles seemed to spark for a second before they all crashed harmlessly all around Sasuke's position. You will have to do better than that if you wish to defeat a member of the Uchiha clan. Diva stared at him seemingly bored. I will admit that you have potential, but compared to Itachi you aren't even close to his level. Sasuke's face shifted into a glare as he continued, I wonder how he could have lost to you when the gap in your skills is so great. Flashback no jutsu begin. As the last Uchiha I can return to Konoha whenever I want, and when I return I will be granted amnesty for my actions because I have killed both Orochimaru and Itachi. Sasuke answered, looking bored, but the look in his eyes made him look smug. Naruto remained silent and let him go before taking a step back and grinning down at him, knowing the perfect way to take him down a peg or two. And yet you couldn't kill Itachi, could you? Naruto asked, seeing Sasuke lose his smirk. I did kill Itachi. I watched as he died. Sasuke narrowed his eyes. But you didn't kill him, did you? He dropped dead before you could avenge your loving family. Naruto watched as Sasuke tried to leap out of the chair, but the restraints kept him pinned. Don't you dare insult my family, Dobi. I know I killed Itachi because he was exhausted. The Uchiha snarled at him. Actually, Itachi died because his illness finally caught up with him. That stopped Sasuke's rant in its tracks. What illness? Sasuke asked, narrowing his eyes further. Apparently Itachi had been suffering from some kind of illness for the past 8 years, and it finally caught up with him during his fight with you. Naruto answered. Flashback no jutsu end. Shut up. Sasuke spat out in a snarl. Diva smirked at seeing this reaction and asked, oh, and why, may I ask, should I do that? Is it perhaps that you didn't kill Itachi? We recovered his body, and I must say I was very surprised to see that he was gravely ill. Shut up. Sasuke shouted as his Mangekyo Sharingan began to spin wildly. Amaterasu, he whispered as he unleashed a massive blast of black flames at the Diva path which blanketed the entire area around them. Shinra Tensei. The black flames were suddenly and violently snuffed out by the force of gravity. Diva stood seemingly unharmed and staring towards him with a neutral expression on his face. What kind of jutsu was that? It cancelled out Amaterasu like it was nothing. Why couldn't I copy that jutsu? Is it a part of the Rinnegan? Sasuke's face remained emotionless, but inside he couldn't help but feel angered at seeing Pain standing there acting like he was nothing. Give up. You are no match for Pain. You are no match for God. Diva spoke with his voice echoing across the street. This only seemed to anger the Uchiha more, who then started making numerous hand seals. I don't have much chakra left, but I won't let him humiliate me or my clan like this. He took a deep breath and brought his hand up to his mouth in the shape of an "Oh, Kaden, Goryuka no Jutsu." Pain raised an eyebrow at seeing his opponent breath out 2 large dragon heads of fire towards the sky. Why is he launching them up at the sky? I am over here, so why would he do something like this? A smirk graced Sasuke's face as he narrowed his eyes at the Diva path. What I just did was use a jutsu specifically designed to create a lightning storm by heating up the atmosphere itself. When this happens, the natural lightning in the area becomes concentrated, and when used as a Raiden jutsu it becomes unavoidable and deadly. This is an S-ranked jutsu from Kumo. Hanzo used it on me if I remember correctly during our battle, but he never told me where he learned it from. It's only taught to a select few, so how does this child know it? Pain asked in thought as he saw Sasuke channeling lightning chakra into his hand. Raiden. Kirin. Shinra Tensei. Suddenly a large dog-like monster made of lightning shot down from the sky and crashed down on where the 2 Peens were standing with a loud roar. But just as suddenly as it appeared, it disappeared in as if it were blown away by some unknown force. Both Peens stood in the center of the newly formed crater seemingly unharmed. No, not unharmed, they weren't even scratched. Now do you see how useless it is to stand against us? Diva asked and jumped high into the air above the village. Now what's he doing? Sasuke asked in thought until he saw Asura's head appear to split open, revealing some kind of cannon on his scalp. It started to glow a bright green and Sasuke's eyes widened as he dropped down to the ground. Susanoo. Buildings were knocked down by the force of the large multi-directional green flames Asura unleashed in every direction. The force of the blast was heard across the entire village, and after a moment silence reigned across the battlefield. From the smoke, Sasuke stood encased in a large spirit which resembled a Yamabushi. In its hand were a massive shield and sword which Pain identified immediately. Those are the Tatsuka no Tsurugi and the Yata no Kagami, the weapons of the Rakudo Sennin. Pain narrowed his eyes upon seeing them. Sasuke smirked as he held out his hand and the spirit brought its sword up. The sword suddenly swung down on where Diva was standing and seemed to slash a long line of destruction for several square blocks. Diva emerged from the smoke and held out both of his hands towards where Sasuke stood. Futon. Repusho, Diva whispered as two blazing white arrows of wind shot out from his fists. They splashed harmlessly across form of the spirit, impressive, but his reaction time is too slow. When I faced Itachi, he counterattacked almost immediately and never gave me an opening to attack. Behold the might of the Uchiha clan, Sasuke said with a smirk, seeing that Pain's attack had little effect. Arrogant little child. Let me show you the might of God, Diva said as he brought up his arm towards Sasuke. Shinra Tensei, he whispered as a sudden blast of gravity hit the Uchiha inside the spirit barrier. How did he? Sasuke tried to think as the Yamabushi seemed to dissolve, and after a moment he coughed up some blood onto the uplifted ground. He stood back up but was unprepared for the quick-moving Asura who appeared in front of him and slammed him into the ground face first. He tried to struggle but he couldn't move once Diva had stabbed his chakra disruption blades into numerous sections of the Uchiha's body. I expected more from an Uchiha. This is very disappointing, Pain told him as the last of Sasuke's chakra was drained from his body. Just then he found himself unable to move either of his bodies, and when his eyes looked down he noticed his shadow was laced in chakra. It appears more company has arrived. Kujimane no Jutsu success, Shikamaru said from behind the two peens. Just then 9 figures appeared in beside them in a collection of blurs. These new arrivals were Guy, Lee, Neji, Tenten, Ino, Choji, Kiba, Hinata and Shino. Almost immediately Neji and Lee destroyed the chakra disruption blades littering Sasuke's form and carried him away from the two peens before setting him down against one of the destroyed walls. Tenten, Ino and Choji went over to check Kakashi, Asuma and Ebisu respectively. How are they doing? Shikamaru asked in a shout over his shoulder while not keeping his eyes off of the Akatsuki members. Kakashi-sensei is still alive though barely, so is Asuma-sensei, but Ebisu-sensei is, he heard Ino trail off at the end. You're going to pay for this, the Nara said to Pain. Why should I? I am merely working towards bringing this world true peace, Diva asked, seemingly not caring that he was currently trapped. Peace. Peace. Kiba asked, clearly furious. He waved his hand out to the sides at the devastation all around them. Take a look around. How can you call this peace? You cannot understand, Diva said, which only angered him more. Enough of this. Guys, kill him now, Shikamaru said as an order. I don't think so, Diva said as Asura's head split open again, revealing its fully charged green cannon. The one left standing shall be justice and peace, it fired. They never stood a chance. Fire country. Konoha. Konohamaru heard, more like felt, the echoing explosion as he arrived at the village square where the battle was taking place. Bodies of the numerous Konoha shinobi littered the streets and their blood seemed to be scattered across what was left of the nearby buildings. It seemed that nearly everyone was evacuated, but he didn't want to. He couldn't cower away in the dirt when his village was under attack by some unknown enemy. As he took a peek around the corner of a destroyed wall, he caught a glimpse of shinobi who was attacking Konoha. He wore a long black cloak covered in red clouds. It covered most of his body from view, but he did see the shinobi's face. The Sarutobi's eyes dotted from place to place as he caught sight of numerous people he knew as the infamous Konoha 11, or was it Konoha 10 now? He couldn't remember. It looked all of them were conscious too, though they all appeared exhausted and a few looked to have been injured. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, Konohamaru whispered as 3 clones appeared silently at his side. Any last words? Pain asked as he picked Kiba up by the neck. Go to hell, the Inuzuka growled out as he struggled. Diva didn't reply as he made to stab him through the heart, only to stop within mere centimeters as Konohamaru jumped out of cover towards them. However, Asura suddenly appeared and grabbed the boy with his many arms. Diva paid the Sarutobi no heed as he turned his attention back to the one he was about to kill. That's the grandson of the Sandaime Hokage, what's he doing here? He's only a genin, Neji thought as he tried to stand with the help of a building's support beam. I have to save him, just like you would do, Guy-sensei, Lee thought as he stood and looked over at his teacher and surrogate father's now lifeless form. He turned away to concentrate on the job at hand and not be overwhelmed by tears. I won't fail, Guy-sensei. Just then, however, something very strange happened. Two figures burst from the ground directly beside Asura. It was Konohamaru and a shadow clone. The Konohamaru in Asura Path's hand suddenly disappeared in a poof of smoke, indicating it was a clone as well, which surprised everyone nearby, including Pain. The shadow clone started channeling chakra into the original's hand, and before Asura knew it, a ball of constantly spinning chakra was suddenly buried into his chest. Rasengan. Konohamaru called out as Asura was blown back and crashed hard through a half-destroyed wall. Wow! When did he learn that? Kakashi thought as he tried to sit up against the destroyed wall. That jutsu, Sasuke thought in anger and slight revulsion. This child is not a genin, Diva thought as tossed Kiba away with one arm and turned his attention to the young Sarutobi. I am Pain, the leader of the Akatsuki. Who are you? He asked. I'm a genin of the Sarutobi clan named after this village. I am Sarutobi Konohamaru, and don't you forget it. Konohamaru declared as he quickly made several hand seals. Kaden. Gukaku no Jutsu. He exhaled a large ball of fire at the Diva path. Shinra Tensai. Pain said as he sent a blast of gravity to obliterate the fireball with nothing more than a wave of his hand. The result, however, sent dust across the area between them, which Konohamaru used wisely, Kawarimi no Jutsu. The Sarutobi disappeared in a poof of smoke following the jutsu. Please let this work. You should know the Rinnegan allows me to track your jutsu, Sarutobi Konohamaru. You cannot hide from me, Pain stated as he turned to the building Konohamaru had moved to and was clearly hiding in. He raised his hand towards the building and whispered, Bansho Tenon. The whole building seemed to implode by some unseen force, leaving nothing but rubble in its wake. From the rubble, Konohamaru shakily stood and sent a glare at the Diva path. Bansho Tenon, Pain said as the boy suddenly found himself being pulled towards the Diva path. Before he could react, Pain grabbed him by the neck, held him up high. Do you now see how hopeless it is to oppose us? Kiss my ass, Konohamaru said just before he poofed out of existence. Pain stepped back in surprise. That was a clone. He looked up quickly, having sensed chakra being used, and caught sight of a large ball of fire descending on his location. Kaden. Gukaku no Jutsu. Shinra Tensai. Pain called out as he destroyed the descending. Then, however, the real Konohamaru dropped down in front of him with another spinning chakra ball in hand. There's not enough time to recharge. Rasengan. The genin called out as he slammed the jutsu into Pain's chest. The Diva path was blown back with great force before crashing hard into the rubble of an already destroyed building. I knew it. This statement surprises the gathered Konoha shinobi in the area and Pain himself. The jutsu you're using to negate my attacks needs time to recharge between uses. I'd say it's about 5 seconds per gap. Did he just figure out how to get past Pain's jutsu? Kakashi thought in shock. Just then the Diva path emerged from the rubble, seemingly unfazed by the attack, but it was clear he had suffered some damage. He shouldn't be standing after a hit like that. How are you? The genin trailed off at seeing his opponent seemingly unharmed. Impressive, but I am God. People like you are very rare individuals. You are one of only a few people to have actually been able to land a blow on the Diva path, Pain stated as he walked out of the rubble without any difficulty. Had your jutsu been using more power, it would have surely destroyed this body, but sadly that feat is beyond you for the moment, he said as he raised his hand in preparation for an attack. However, before he can do anything, a pink blur appears beside Konohamaru. Reinforcements. Sakura Nekken, Konohamaru asked as he saw who it was. All of the critically injured at the hospital have been healed, so I left the doctors to treat the rest of the patients while I came to help, Sakura explained as she looked over at Pain. Though against someone like him I'm not sure what I can do, she thought as she saw him. I shouldn't play around any more than I already have, Pain thought as he turned away from the two and looked off towards the Hokage tower. He leapt away before anyone could stop him. I wonder if she will recognize me. Where's he going? Konohamaru asked, seeing their opponent flee. I don't know, Sakura admitted and turned her attention to the large number of wounded Konohamaru ninja in the area. Long time no see, Tsunade. The voice caught the attention of the Hokage and the 4 Anbu on the roof of the Hokage tower. They turned swiftly and saw that it was indeed the man they feared. Pain, you're the only one left of the legendary Sanin. You're that kid, Tsunade whispered as she recognized the face of the Omegakure war orphan. I've wanted to talk to you for quite some time now, the Diva Path stated as he stared the five down. Why are you here? The Hokage asked as she narrowed her eyes at him. I am here to draw out the Kyuubi and the Nibi of course, Pain answered with an almost mocking tone. This of course angered the assembled Anbu. You mean you're using us to get to him? Snarled one of the Anbu. I have captured almost all of the Jinchuriki, only 3 remain, Pain stated lowering his head slightly. The shinobi villages have lost the power that the Biju bring them, your peace results in violence towards, he continued. I won't say that everything Konoha has done has been right but, I won't accept your way of doing things either, Tsunade said bordering on shouting. Watch what you say. This is your only warning from God, Pain said with a slight glare. You'll never get what you want the most, Tsunade spoke simply. The Diva Path simply stared at her for a few moments before asking, and why is that? Tsunade let a smile cross her face as she spoke, Naruto is strong, he'll beat you. Pain's face remained impassive, don't make me laugh. He turned a moment later, I want you to feel pain, understand pain, to think about pain, to accept pain, to know pain. He jumped high into the air using his gravity manipulation to give him a large boost. Those who don't know pain can never know true peace. Tsunade watched as he jumped as realization swept over her. Does he still have something up his sleeve? High above the ground, Pain hovered looking down on the village while charging a large amount of chakra into his hands and eyes. I will give the world more pain, the Diva Path said as his eyes bore down on the village, almost like a god. Pain, Tsunade shouted as she rushed to stop him. It was too late. Shinra Tensai. And so Konohagakure no Sato, the village hidden in the leaves was no more. Wave Country. Tazuna's house. Did you hear that? Naruto asked as he turned his head to look out of the window. Yugito looked up at that confused, hear what? I could have sworn that I just heard Tsunade Obaken, the Kitsune Sennin answered as he looked around. I think you're hearing things Naruto, Yugito shook her head. Maybe, Naruto said shaking it off but couldn't help but feel something was wrong. Sometimes he hates it when he's right. Fukasaku jumped in through the window surprising everyone in the room. He was panting hard though from old age or constant running nobody knew. Old man Toad, Naruto half asked. Naruto, pant, Konoha, pant, pain, pant, attack, Fukasaku said in between pants. Naruto shot up out of his seat. What? The Toad caught his breath and said clearly, Pain is attacking Konoha right now. If that's true then it's a lure, Yugito spoke up having caught on. 100 thoughts were going through Naruto's mind as tried to process this information. Why would Pain do it? What could he have to gain from doing this? Revenge? No. He wanted him. Pain wanted him. This was a way to draw him out so as to capture him. Pain was using Konoha to get to him. It's a trap, spoke the old Toad. What do we do? Asked the Neko Sennin understanding the situation. Spring the trap, Naruto answered simply. Ma's already in the area, she can reverse summon us at any time, Fukasaku stated. Alright, summon me now, Naruto told him. Hey, I'm going with you, Yugito said as a statement more than a demand. Naruto looked at her for a few seconds before nodding knowing there was no way he could leave her behind. Alright. Grab on and hold on tight, I don't want you falling off. She grabbed onto him and a moment later the two Sennin and the old Toad disappeared in 3 puffs of smoke. After a moment of silence descended on the kitchen room, Tsunami spoke up, they never finished their meals. That's a story for another time. Fire Country. Konoha Crater. The once great hidden village of the leaves was no more, what was left was barely worthy of being called a crater. The only things that had survived the village's destruct were the outer walls of the village and the Hokage monument itself along with the buildings above it. Everything else had been leveled. Debris littered the outer layer of the crater and standing in its center were 2 people dressed in Akatsuki cloaks, well technically 7 people if one were to count the additional 5 bodies that made up the 6 paths of pain. Shikamaru groaned as his teammates pulled him out from the rubble. He sat back against the upturned stone and tried to fight down the pain in his tight leg. Great. His leg was broken. Just great, and when things couldn't get any worse. Are you okay, Shikamaru? Shoji asked as Ino started to work on his leg. I guess so. My leg is broken though, the Nara answered, holding his side. He sat up more. What happened? What? They looked up at seeing Tsunade looking down into the crater in horror and disbelief. This, however, quickly turned to anger. Damn it. I'll never forgive you for this. I'll never forgive you, Pain. The seal on her head, she must have used all of her chakra to protect everyone from Pain's jutsu, Sakura said upon seeing Tsunade's blank forehead. She suddenly jumped down into the crater, surprising everyone that saw and watched as she made her way across the large expanse to a place a few feet away from Pain. She stood there glaring at him with all her anger visible, though she appeared to be panting slightly, probably from overusing her jutsu. I am the Godime Hokage, and I will not allow you to trample on the treasures and the dreams of those who came before me. As Hokage, I will put a stop to you here and now. Tsunade shouted, her voice echoing throughout the destroyed village as everyone looked on. She's almost out of chakra, what can she do? Shoji asked as they looked on. I don't know, Sakura admitted. It looks like you understand a little of Pain now, however. Diva raised his hand. I have no use for you, Pain stated as the repaired Asura shot forward faster than Tsunade could react. No, Hokage-sama. The Anbu along with most of the shinobi of the village called out to her, seeing the danger. The one I want, Pain began just as the Asura path was about to cut down Tsunade. Is me right? A red and yellow figure seemed to drop from the sky and tore right through the Asura path like it was made of butter. Rasengan, the figure said as Asura crumbled under the assault. Everyone looking on couldn't help but feel shocked at who now stood in front of the Hokage. Decked out in a new red fox sage trench coat was one Namikaze Uzumaki Naruto. His coat waving in the wind as his eyes appeared as vertical slits signifying his ascension into his sage mode. The Toad Elders, Fukasaku and Shima, were riding on his shoulders, though they appeared to be hanging on for fear of falling off. Jiraiya, Minato-kun, Tsunade asked with wide eyes as she saw two distinct images overlap the teen's own. Naruto turned his head slightly. Actually, it's Naruto, Obakun. Up in the rubble, everyone stood wide-eyed at seeing the Kitsune Sennin. Naruto? Sakura asked with wide eyes. That's definitely him, Neji stated, equally as shocked. He just took out one of Pain's bodies with one hit, the Hyuga male said. Nissan did, Konohamaru whispered in disbelief. The Hokage shouldn't have to dirty their hands with scum like this. Take a break, Obakun. This is my show now, Naruto said over his shoulder. However, he never took his eyes off of Pain and his partner. Namikaze Naruto, Diva spoke as his eyes bore into the blonde teen. Let's settle this once and for all. Naruto shouted. Pain above us, Konan shouted as she was looking up. Hi no ya. A volley of flame-covered arrows fell from the sky, striking the place where the Akatsuki members had jumped away from a moment ago. Yugito touched down beside Naruto with her bow outstretched and more arrows already loaded. Damn it, I missed. Just then two large, bordering on enormous, beasts landed in the crater. It was easy for everyone to recognize them. It was the Kyuubi and the Nibi. They stood quite a bit behind Tsunade as they both let out a loud roar which echoed through the destroyed village. Everyone from Konoha looked on fearfully, having not seen the demon that had nearly destroyed their home for over 16 years now. Yugito grinned as she cracked her knuckles. This'll be fun. Naruto nodded as Sakino and Rei dropped down beside the two Sennin. You can take the girl, but that bastard is mine. Fire Country. Konoha Crater. Take Katsuyu, she might be able to help you, Tsunade told him as she held out a small slug. Naruto nodded as the two Toad Elders helped Slug into his inner pocket. Don't lose her. Naruto nodded again. Right. Rei-chan, Yugito spoke up, getting the cat's attention. Get Tsunade-sama out of here, she's in the way. The cat nodded and packed the last of the Sannin up. Good luck, was all the blonde Hokage said to them as she was placed on the cat's back and held in place by its tail which had wrapped around her. Diva Path watched what had happened to his rhino through narrowed eyes, and a split second later Animal slammed both of her hands down on the ground. Suin Kuchio's no jutsu. Two puffs of smoke soon followed, accompanied by two large creatures charging out of it towards the Kitsune Sennin. One was a dog while the other was a ram. Each of them was the same height as the rhino and they were both barreling at him. Fukasaku and Shima then jumped off from Naruto's shoulders in unison, kept their eyes on the summons. Senpo. Kawazunaki, they said as their voices echoed through the air, piercing the eardrums of both summons. Naruto shot forward between the two now dazed creatures and charged towards where Pain stood. Just then Kyuubi and Nibi shot forward, also intent on destroying the two summoned creatures. They wrapped their tails around the disoriented two and flung them high into the air, all the while charging their respective attacks at their mouths. Kubiko Amari. Kyuubi roared as the chakra sphere at its mouth exploded at the dog creature. Nekomata Gukakyu. Nibi exclaimed as the ball of pure fire accelerated upwards at the giant ram. The two summons were instantly vaporized in the skies above Konoha. Naruto slapped the whirlpool symbol on the back of his wrist and instantly his sword flashed into existence. He grasped its handle as he drew near Pain. Diva hadn't taken his eyes off of him during the entire confrontation between their summons and so easily dispatched his Preta path to intercept him. As Naruto and Preta drew nearer to each other, time seemed to slow between them until Naruto disappeared in a poof of smoke, surprising Pain, who hadn't taken his eyes off of Naruto's form since the fight began. When did he? Pain thought as Naruto suddenly dropped down from the sky behind him, sword in hand. Gotcha! Shouted the Kitsune Sennin as he swung his sword from the side. Preta didn't have any time to react as his head was severed from his body in one clean swing. It's a good thing I took this one out early. Pa did say it could absorb any ninjutsu. Naruto twirled the sword in his hand for a second before turning and pointing it at Diva and the remaining three paths. That's two. He just took out another one and it didn't even look like he was trying. Kiba exclaimed at seeing the battle in progress. Neji nodded. I noticed it before. The Naruto that saved Tsunade and charged at Pain was just a clone. The real one was standing on some kind of spinning chakra plate above us waiting for his moment to strike, the Hyuga explained. What's with the sword? It's beautiful, Tenten commented even though she could barely see it from this distance. That's the sword of the whirlpool, Tsunade told them, having been brought to the group by Rei, who had remained with them. It was his mother's sword back when she was younger. I haven't seen it in a long time. I assumed it was lost when she died, but clearly Naruto was able to find it, she continued. However, the Naruto resealed the whirlpool sword after slapping the back of his hand again and suddenly began making hand seals, a lot of hand seals. Now what's he doing? Pain asked in thought as he felt the wind suddenly start to pick up around him. Them. I'm going to kill every last one of you, Pain. Naruto shouted as he brought his hands to his side and suddenly a ball of wind began to form in each of his palms. He brought both balls together and shouted, Futon, Kamikaze no Jutsu. The moment the two balls touched, a large tornado seemed to shoot out from his arms and accelerate towards where Pain's body stood. What is that? Pain thought as he scrambled his bodies to get out of the way. He's taking them out one after the other, Kiba commented, whistling at the power of the jutsu his former comrade had used. That jutsu just now, that was easily an S-ranked jutsu, but I've never seen or even heard of a jutsu like that before, Kakashi said, unsure. What's worse is the amount of chakra need to pull it off. I was able to copy it with my Sharingan, but I would never be able to use it. The strain would kill me, the copy nin explained. No one noticed the almost non-existent scowl on Sasuke's face. This isn't fair. How can he know such a jutsu? Who taught him it, and how could he be able to do it without suffering any kind of loss, while I would not be able to physically use it without self-harm? It must be the Kyuubi's doing. Of course it would give the Dobi anything he wanted. He always gets everything handed to him. Note. I want everyone to remember this sentence, thought every time you read the manga. He's running low on chakra. He must have used up half of his reserves on that jutsu just now, Pain realized as he sent the human path to strike at the Kitsune Sennin. Damn it, Sage Mode is almost out of juice, Naruto growled in thought as he tried to jump away from the approaching human path. Thinking fast, he created two spinning chakra spheres in his hands and slammed them into the ground, Rasenrangan. Dust shot up, blanketing the entire area in a cloud of smoke, making Pain realize what had happened. He's created a smokescreen. After a moment, however, the dust cleared, but Naruto was nowhere in sight. Where did he go? A flash of light from above caught his attention and he looked up, but was too late to stop Naruto's attack on the human path. Not enough time. Futon. Rasen Shuriken, Naruto exclaimed as threw the spinning shuriken of wind and power down on the human path's position. It struck human and immediately expanded, engulfing everything within its range as Naruto and Pain propelled themselves away from it to avoid the jutsu's ability to suck everything in range into it. Human was ripped apart from the constant barrage of attacks done by the jutsu until there was nothing left of him. He had been completely vaporized, leaving nothing behind as the jutsu finally exploded in great blast of wind. That's four, Naruto said while trying to steady his heavy breathing from doing so many high-level attacks one after the other. Impressive. As expected of a fellow student of Jiraiya-sensei, Pain commented as the dust from the attack settled. Jiraiya-sensei? Naruto asked, unsure what he meant by that. Jiraiya-sensei was my teacher, the same as he was yours. This makes me your fellow pupil. We should be able to understand each other. Our sensei wanted peace, Pain stated knowingly. That's bullshit. It's true he wanted peace, but take a look around. Naruto yelled as waved his arms all around at the crater that was Konoha. How can you call this peace? He shouted in rage. Why in the hell are you doing this anyway? My answer won't change anything, Pain said simply. Well, I want you hear it. Why are you trying so desperately to get your hands on the Biju? Why? Naruto asked the very same question that had always plagued him. My goal is something not even Sensei was able to achieve. I intend to bring peace through justice, Pain answered. Naruto just stared on, angered by the Akatsuki leader's answer. How can you say that after everything you've done? Ero Sennin, Konoha and all of the Jinchuriki. You say that everything you've done to them was justified. By now Naruto's eyes were beginning to flash red. What the hell is wrong with you? Then what do you want? Pain asked. I want to kill you. That's what I want, Naruto answered almost immediately. Naruto, Yugito thought as she looked on from the skies above. Diva let a small smile slip onto his face at the answer. I see, that's wonderful. That is your justice, but let me ask you something. Do you think only a select few are to speak about peace and justice? Naruto calmed himself and asked, what do you mean? Konoha, Suna, Kumo, Iwa, Kiri, they've all grown too big. They are all set in their ways. They care about nothing but themselves and their own peace and justice. Pain stated and saw Naruto had narrowed his eyes again. They go to war constantly. Their peace is a result of their violence against the other, smaller villages. In each of the shinobi wars my home has been destroyed. In the last war my family were killed, and soon after a very dear friend of mine was killed because of Konoha. The major villages always drag the smaller ones into their conflicts, never thinking about the lives of their allies. They think they are nothing more than figures on paper. Naruto remained silent as he thought the conversation he had with his sensei long ago. Flashback no jutsu begin. Even I can tell hatred is spreading, Jiraiya said sitting in a lotus position. Hatred? Naruto asked confused. The Gamma Sennin scratched the back of his head. I want to do something about it, but I don't know what, but I believe that the day will come when people truly understand each other. Naruto smiled, trying not to feel overwhelmed. That sounds hard. Jiraiya shrugged. If I can't find the answer, it will be up to you to do it. Naruto gave him his best salute. Okay, if that's what you want I can't refuse. Flashback no jutsu end. You and I are the same. We are both working towards the peace Jiraiya spoke of. The justice I have meted out against Konoha is exactly the same as the justice you are trying to mete out against me, Namikaze Naruto, Pain told him. You know the pain of loss and you are working for your justice just the same as I do for mine, spoke the Akatsuki leader, having kept his eyes on the blonde throughout their conversation. People are driven to revenge in the name of justice, and so it becomes a chain of hatred. If you read a bit of history you will know that whatever the future brings, people will never understand each other. The shinobi world is ruled by hatred. How can you possibly bring peace when the world is consumed by hatred? Naruto closed his eyes for a moment as he thought on his answer. I don't have an answer, not yet, but I will. That's a promise. You are foolish. I created Akatsuki in order to gather the Biju and turn them into the most powerful weapon in existence, Pain stated, surprising Naruto and everyone who was listening. This weapon will allow me to break the chain of hatred. This weapon will be far more powerful than what I used to destroy Konoha. It will be able to destroy an entire nation in an instant. When it is used, the world will know true pain, and the fear caused by the weapon will bring stability to the world. That's not peace. That's nothing but using fear to control people. Naruto shouted in rage at such an idea. And yet it will stop people from fighting, it will break the chain of hatred for a time. Then once the pain is healed, people will begin fighting again. This time, however, they will use the weapon themselves, and so it will continue for the rest of time. That is my wish. Can you see peace? Pain's eyes seemed to bear into him. You're clinging to one twisted sense of peace, bastard, Naruto growled as he made a hand seal. And you're really starting to piss me off. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, two clones popped into existence beside him. A few seconds later they had already channeled the chakra needed for his jutsu, Futon, Rasenshuriken. Diva narrowed his eyes as he saw the chakra shuriken sail towards him through the air. Just before it hit, however, a completely restored Preta path jumped down directly in between Diva and the jutsu. It took a few seconds before Preta completely absorbed the Rasenshuriken, but nevertheless Pain's plan worked. However, he missed crucial detail. The Naruto he had been talking to was a clone, which he realized when it poofed out of existence. The Naraka path suddenly looked up at the sky and was unable to dodge the oncoming attack Naruto had sent at him. Cho Udama Rasengan. Sage mode deactivated. Needless to say, the Naraka path was defeated, along with everything within 300-foot radius. Naruto came walking out of the smoke dragging the all but destroyed body. He threw it at Diva's feet and said with a glare, "For the record, that's 5 of you I've killed." "You say my peace is a lie, yet you do not have an answer yourself," Pain said, seemingly not caring that another of his bodies, and quite possibly his most valuable, had been destroyed. "You have done well to force me to go this far, however it no longer matters as I have already won this fight," said the Diva Path. "Oh, and why's that?" Naruto said as he glared. "You're out of power," Pain said simply. It was true. His Sage mode had shut down because of the high-level jutsus he had been using continuously since the fight started. That was the weakness of the Fox Sage mode. As soon as you ran out of power, it would shut down and you couldn't get it back until your natural chakra reserves could recharged. Chakra pills wouldn't work, so that left only one way to recharge the Sage mode. He couldn't use chakra while his Sage mode was recharging. That left him open to attack, a lot. Yugito's cat Sage mode actually had the same weakness as well, but she didn't have that many chakra draining jutsus in her arsenal, so she could remain in Sage mode for a lot longer than him. Anyway, back to the fight. Diva shot forward with 2 of his chakra disruption blades drawn and ready to gut him. Naruto made a hand seal, then remembered, "Damn, I forgot. I can't use any jutsu while I'm recharging." He groaned as he slapped his hand on the whirlpool symbol, thus releasing his sword. "Alright then, I'll just have to improvise." "That sword won't help you here," Pain said as he lunged with both of his blades at the ready. Naruto parried the first strike and made to counterattack, only to find that his opponent had sidestepped and was bringing his other sword to stab his shoulder. Naruto twirled his sword around and narrowly deflected the blow as it came. Diva then tried to swinging both of his swords down on him in the shape of an X. Naruto brought up his sword into the center of the attack and held it back. "Your kenjutsu is impressive." However, Diva suddenly twisted on both of his swords and with a screeching echo of metal move against metal as Naruto's whirlpool sword was forced out of his hands and sent clambering to the floor not too far away. "You still have yet to master kenjutsu," Diva said as he made to stab Naruto in the shoulder and disable him. Naruto's eyes widened. "I'm out of time." However, at that moment fate decided to cut him some slack. Sage mode reactivated. Shunpo no Jutsu. There was a flash of yellow as Naruto appeared behind Diva and delivered a monstrous headbutt to Pain's face. Diva was sent flying back before being left sprawled on the ground not too far away. That was a close one. Too close. He almost had me there. Thankfully he had already thought up a new plan of attack and so made a hand seal, Futon, Daitapa. Now what's he doing? Pain thought as Diva stood once again with Preta at his side. Naruto's jutsu had sent a cloud of dust across the area. He's not using the same plan again as he. Hundreds of Narutos suddenly burst from the cloud and barreled towards them. What is he planning? Bunshin Daibakua. The large number of clones shouted when they were close enough. They exploded a moment later, but Preta absorbed the blasts but was unprepared for the real Naruto emerging from the ground below him while he was preoccupied by the clones with his sword in hand. Naruto sliced upwards, cutting straight through Preta's entire body in one clean motion. It fell a moment later as Naruto rested his sword at his side once more. Pant, hey, technically, that's 6, Naruto said between breaths with a grin. He stood up straight and started making hand seals again, and now I'll finish it. He charged the 2 wind balls in his hand and brought them together. Futon, Kamikaze no Jutsu. Diva gaze was unwavering as the large tornado came crashing at him. Pain. Shinra Tensei. Naruto held the jutsu for another 5 seconds before cutting off the power and let the jutsu die out. Dust and smoke had flooded the area between the two, and as more of it cleared, it left nothing but a large gouged out terrain. When the last of the smoke cleared, the diva path could be seen standing in the center of the gouged out terrain. Behold the might of God, Pain declared as he stood seemingly unharmed. What the hell is he? Naruto thought as sweat began to drip down his face. Shinra Tensei, Pain shouted as he thrust out his hand towards him. Naruto was suddenly blown back by a seemingly invisible force and sent crashing into the far end of the crater's wall with a monstrous impact. What the hell was that? Naruto. Fukasaku shouted in worry. Kyuubi. Nibi. Help him. Yugito shouted as she continued to dodge the numerous papers. We know. Kyuubi shouted back as he made to slam his open paw down on the Akatsuki leader. Before he could crush him, however, Pain jumped high above the fox's head. Stay still, vermin. I've got him, Nibi said as she tried to catch him with her tails but sadly missed. Let me show you the might of God, Pain said as he held out both of his arms towards both summoned bosses. Shinra Tensei, there was a sudden crack in the ground as both Kyuubi and Nibi were blown away. How? He shouldn't have been able to affect us with that jutsu alone unless our power is still sealed away, so we can't stand against that jutsu as we are now. Kyuubi growled in thought as both he and Nibi crashed hard into the outer wall of the crater with incredible force. Even the Kyuubi and the Nibi have fallen before the might of God, Pain declared as landed in the center of the crater again. He took note of Naruto just barely climbing to his feet at the edge of the crater and brought his hand up to where the blonde stood, Bansho Tenon. Naruto suddenly found himself being pulled towards Pain at an alarming pace. His eyes widened when Pain brought up his left hand and formed a fist, all the while gravity still pulled him towards the diva path. Naruto barely registered the punch that was delivered to his face even as he was sent sprawling across the ground. Pain had flooded his senses, like every bone in his body had turned to mush, but he fought down the pain and stood with anger overpowering the pain. Bastard! Naruto shouted in anger as he turned only to face Shinra Tensei. The ground around Naruto cracked as his body felt like it had been torn apart but still remained in one piece. Pain drew one of his chakra disruption blades, and before Naruto could even realize it, he was stabbed through the shoulder by Pain. The blade pierced through the front of his body and out of the back, forcing him to grunt in pain. He coughed up some blood as Pain pulled the sword out and held out his hand to finish the job. Shinra Tensei. Naruto let out a barely audible grunt before he fell back onto the floor with an echoing slam. Pain then threw several long spear-like chakra disruption blades into the air above them, where they remained hovering. This is the end, Kitsune Sennin, was all Pain said. Naruto. 3 voices rang out. The blades struck, and blood splattered on the unforgiving ground. Fire Country. Konoha Crater. All was silent. Drip, drip, drip. What just happened didn't register in the minds of anyone that had been watching, or even Naruto himself. Yugito was standing over him. She was covering him. She had protected him from Pain's attack. She was bleeding, a lot. Yugito. Naruto shouted as he fought down his own pain and grabbed her as she fell. Pain's chakra disruption blades littered her body, but she didn't seem to mind. What the hell were you thinking? She smiled weakly up at him. She coughed slightly. I couldn't let you die. Not after everything you've done for me, she whispered. Why? He asked as tears began to form at the edge of his eyes. She smiled up at him. Idiot. Cough, cough. Are you really that dense, Naruto? It's because I fell in love with you, you reckless idiot. He didn't know what to say to that. They're beaten. I'm coming to you, Konan said to Pain. The Akatsuki leader nodded. I should be able to finish things here. Konan nodded and dissolved into papers, leaving the 3 alone in the crater. Yugito. Come on, stay with me, Naruto said as her eyes slowly closed. Pain looked on and commented, This actually reminds me of when Konoha killed my parents for simply being home. Don't worry, she's not dead. I need her alive. She's one of my precious hosts after all. Shut up. Naruto growled as he laid her on the ground, removed the chakra blades. He stood shaking slightly with his shoulders moving up and down, signifying his stressed breathing. You'll pay for this. He turned swiftly and took a few steps away from her, with his eyes now having turned red. I'll kill you. Red chakra exploded from Naruto's body and wrapped around him. Pain's eyes widened slightly, having just realized that this was the first time he had seen any form of demonic power from either of the two. A column of black chakra consumed the area where Naruto stood, and just as soon as it appeared, it disappeared to reveal the silhouette of a four-tailed demon chakra fox. It looks like his anger has triggered the fox's full powers, Pain thought as he narrowed his eyes at the demon in front of him. Do you hate me? He asked. Do you really think people can understand each other like this? He continued. The fox roared in anger. Oh shit. Kiba gulped when he saw the monstrous chakra fox. This is very bad, Sakura said, remembering the last time she saw Naruto like this. Where's Yamato? Kakashi asked, knowing his seal tags would be ineffective right now. He's on a mission with Sai and Anko, Tsunade answered as she gritted her teeth. Why now of all times? I must get Yugito-chan out of harm's way. Sakino thought as hefted the Neko Sennin onto her back with her tails and took off towards where Rei and the Konoha 11 were at. Shockwaves rippled across the crater as the four-tailed Naruto slammed his Yuki-covered fist down on the ground. When the dust cleared, Pain could be seen standing where he before seemingly unharmed. Suddenly Pain shot forward and drew one of his chakra disruption blades as he drew near. This isn't going to be easy, Pain thought as Naruto flicked one of his tails at the diva path only for it to dodge and strike at the demon vessel's face. Naruto was knocked back, but just a second later a large mass of chakra in the shape of another body erupted from his chest and slashed at Pain. Pain saw the danger, however, and withdrew before he had his head cut off and jumped back several feet as Naruto recovered from the blow and returned to a human shape. Close combat is suicide against someone like him, Pain thought as he saw the fox. Suddenly Naruto puffed his chest out and a large mass of chakra erupted from it. What now? The chakra took the shape of a large hand and crashed down in front of him, making him take a step back. A moment later the chakra retracted, pulling Naruto across the distance between the two and bringing him crashing down on where Pain stood. His Yuki-covered fist hit the ground just as Pain jumped out of the way and sent a massive shockwave across the land. I have to take him seriously or I'll be killed, thought the Akatsuki leader as he touched back down on the now upturned ground. Pain raised his hand towards Naruto almost immediately and called out, Shinra Tensei. Even with the Yuki weighing him down, Naruto was blown back by the attack and crashed hard into the edge of the crater's outer wall. All was silent for a moment until a gut-wrenching screech filled the air. The fox roared as dozens of red and blue balls of chakra were released from his body and floated in the air. After Sakino had placed the unconscious Yugito down on the ground near the group of Konoha nins, her eyes widened upon seeing what her summoner was about to do. She turned swiftly and shouted to the Hokage, you need to get the people behind Pain out of there right now. Why? Tsunade asked the summoned fox. Naruto-kun's about to use a very powerful attack, your people will be killed even if he hit Pain with it. Sakino said as a barely controlled shout. Get them out of there now. Yonbaiko Amari. Naruto called out as he belched out the large mass of chakra at high velocity towards Pain. The Diva Path saw it coming, however, and with slightly fearful eyes raised his hand to stop the attack. Shinra Tensei. The chakra projectile detonated just before it hit Pain, but the resulting direct blast covered Pain's location and stretched another 20 miles behind him. The blast tore through the side of the crater and created a long canyon for about 15 miles. Konoha's wall on that side had been knocked down from the blast, and all that remained was a long gorge between two sections of land. The dust cleared and Pain could be seen again, but this time he was standing on one knee, breathing slightly hard. This didn't last long, however, as he stood once again seemingly unhurt, though a bit exhausted, but nothing serious. You, why won't you just die? Naruto shouted as more chakra exploded from within him. Two more tails formed on his shroud along with a set of bones which made him look like he had a skeleton covering his body. He roared again, sending shockwaves through the air as the facial bones formed around his face. There are 6 tails. Kiba shouted in surprise, which mirrored the other's disbelief. This is bad. This is very bad, Ino said as she shivered from the oppressive aura the fox gave off. Nissan has held this back for so long, Konohamaru trailed off as he watched. He's lost control though. Everyone turned when they heard the voice and saw both of the Toad elders had climbed up to where they stood. Are you sure? Sakura asked, slightly hoping that he hadn't. Fukasaku nodded sadly. He's acting on instinct now. Take a look. He nodded down into the crater. Inside the 6-tailed fox a beautiful green necklace glowed and large wood-like objects burst out in an attempt to stop the demon chakra. The fox, Naruto however just thrust his fist into his chest and pulled out the necklace before crushing it in his hand, creating a small shockwave from the resulting power spike. Was that some kind of seal? Pain thought, confused at seeing the necklace. My grandfather's necklace is. Tsunade trailed off at seeing its fate. Part of her was relieved that it had been destroyed so that no one would fall under its curse again, but another part of was saddened for losing another piece of her grandfather. Why did the seal not activate before when Naruto was using 4 tails? Kakashi asked. The seal that was placed on the necklace was only set to activate if Naruto lost control. He didn't lose control of his 4-tailed form, but he did when that number increased to 6, Fukasaku answered knowingly. The seal was only capable of suppressing 4 tails of power at the most. 6 tails however, he trailed off as they knew what he meant. Dobi, Sasuke thought as he watched on. Though he wouldn't admit it, he was always afraid to fight Naruto when he used Kyuubi's chakra. That was the reason he suppressed the Kyuubi while it was inside Naruto 7 months ago before Naruto was banished. He had become even more wary of the blonde after discovering that he was able to match Orochimaru at full strength while Sasuke had only managed to kill the hubby Sennin because his body was already in a weakened state. There was a sudden echoing bang as the 6-tailed Naruto dashed towards him at a very alarming pace. He's faster than before. The chakra is no longer weighing him down. What's going on here? Pain thought as he was barely able to bring his arms up in time to counter-attack, Shinra Tensei. Naruto had planted 4 of his tails into the ground prior to Pain's attack, thus allowing him to shrug off the blow and not be blown away. The fox roared as its skeleton fist connected with the diva's face. What strength! The power behind that one blow, Pain thought as he crashed into the side of the crater. Naruto touched down right in front of him while he was already charging another attack. Oh no, he's about to. Rokubako Ima, Bansho Tenin. Pain interrupted as a large rock slammed into the fox from the side. This of course forced Naruto to lose concentration on his Oni jutsu. And the world was engulfed in light. Wow! Tenten exclaimed as she covered her eyes. Holy shit! Kiba shouted as the massive explosion of chakra lit up the side of the crater on the opposite side to where they stood. Damn it! Tsunade grunted as she saw the blast die down. That wasn't even fully charged either, Fukasaku whispered as he saw the new crater that had been created beside Konoha's own crater. Yugito groaned from the ground as her eyes started to flutter open. Naruto. Hey, she's waking up, Rei said, catching Sakino's attention along with everyone else's. The diva path stood with his Akatsuki cloak all but destroyed as he glared at the grinning chakra fox who stepped around the large rock that separated them. His strength has exceeded my expectations. I can't win like this. I will have to use that jutsu if I even want to survive this, Pain thought as he turned and jumped away out of newly created crater. Rokubako Amari. He heard from behind as he attempted to dodge. Well, at least I know he's following me, Pain thought as he narrowly dodged and the attack hit the tree just ahead of him. The sound of another explosion soon followed the blast of light in the distance as yet another one of Naruto's attacks was used. Meanwhile, Sakura finished healing Yugito and she looked up at her personal summon. What's happened? She asked. Naruto-kun has released 6 tails worth of power and lost control. Pain's currently running away from him, but Naruto-kun appears to be pursuing him, Rei informed her. Yugito gritted her teeth as she tried to stand. I have to stop him. You're in no condition to do anything right now, Rei told her as she wrapped her tail around the blonde teenager. Damn it, Yugito growled through gritted teeth. Rokubako Amari. Another ball of compressed destruction exploded near where Pain stood after it crazed him. He nearly got me with that one. Behind them the terrain was littered with craters and canyons stretching for miles. Neither cared for collateral damage, but Naruto didn't look like he was going to stop anytime soon. Diva Path should be close enough now, Pain thought as he stopped and made a hand seal. He turned swiftly and concentrated his gravity manipulation into a single compressed sphere, Chibaku Tensai. I'd rather not use this, but I have no choice, he thought as he hurled the gravity ball into the sky above them. The cubified Naruto looked up at the ball as he suddenly felt the gravity of the world around him shift and pull the ground out from around him. The earth itself was ripped open as large masses of earth were pulled up and engulfed the ball. This continued for several more seconds with the miniature moon slowly getting bigger. Eventually the ground under Naruto was being pulled up also along with the fox. The chakra fox seemed to see the danger and started charging his attack again, Rokubako Amari. The chakra projectile hit the underside of the miniature moon and exploded in a torrent of light, however it remained relatively intact and Naruto could do nothing as he landed on it. More rocks, boulders came a few moments later and buried Naruto inside of the hole he had created for himself in the miniature moon. It's over, Pain thought, breathing hard from the strain of using such a high-level technique. Crack. The side of the moon seemed to explode outwards slightly. That's impossible. Suddenly a large, enormous fox with 8 tails burst out from the surface of the moon. He broke out of Chibaku Tensai with brute force. At this rate I'll have to create a bigger one. He caught sight of the fox charging another attack, though this time the chakra projectile looked a lot bigger. Oh no. Hachibiko Amari was all the warning he was going to get as the attack exploded downwards in a torrent of light. Shinra Tensai. Pain called out in hopes of surviving the blast. When the light died down, the land around Pain no longer looked like it was capable of supporting life. A line, canyon stretched from where he had been standing all the way to base of a nearby mountain. The fox, who was still trapped on Chibaku Tensai, stared down on where Pain stood shakily breathing hard. Unreal. Pain trailed off in thought as tried to maintain his jutsu. Suddenly, however, the fox stopped moving as its eyes became lifeless. What now? The fox closed its eyes as it began to glow slightly until it illuminated the sky with its light. Mindscape. Shinigami seal. Naruto was on his knees grabbing his head as the seal on his now bare stomach was distorted. Memories echoed through his mind with each passing moment, making him lose further control. You reckless idiot. Yugito, the water at his feet was bubbling around him. Who would want this guy? He's a total idiot. He shakily stood as the water began to rise. Please. Who would date this idiot? He's reckless. Gets into more trouble than anyone I've ever met and is a pervert. If it wasn't for the fact that he's saved my life, I would have gladly remained in Kumo instead of staying with him on this crazy ride. He whispered as the memories flashed through his mind like images. Thanks for waking me, Naruto. So, he said as under his breath as he sluggishly walked towards the seal. I couldn't let you die, not after everything you've done for me. Sorry, Naruto finished as he grasped at the seal paper on the cage. It's because I fell in love with you, you reckless idiot. Goodbye, he whispered as he took a hold and his arm was stopped. You shouldn't do that, Naruto, said one Namikaze Minato who had grabbed the teenager's arm, preventing him from removing the seal. Dad. Mindscape. Shinigami seal. The Yondaime Hokage. Namikaze Minato turned swiftly and picked up his son before carrying him away from the seal paper which protected the Kyuubi's power. The seal is set so that if 8 tails are released, I'd appear within your consciousness. I hoped you never would have to use it, but I looked forward to seeing how much you had grown, so I guess you could call it even. Minato said as he set Naruto down on the floor. Dad? Naruto asked as he took a step away from the man. Minato nodded. Sorry about dropping in like this, but I can't sit back and let you ruin your life like this. Dad? Naruto trailed off, shaking his head slightly. He suddenly lunged forward without warning and buried his fist into his father's stomach. You idiot. Minato grunted in pain from the blow as Naruto seemed to burst into tears before him. Why did you have to seal the fox inside your own son? Do you know how much trouble it's caused me? I don't know whether to be happy or pissed off right now. Minato recovered after a moment and smiled sadly. The Yondaime sighed. Naruto, how old are you now? Naruto wiped the tears from his eyes as he sobbed out, 16. Minato smiled sadly. 16 I'm having a bit of trouble with that. To me, you were just born this morning. He looked down slightly as he continued. I'm sorry, I've done nothing but cause you pain. Naruto had calmed down by now and wiped away the last of his tears. It's fine, I guess I just needed to get that out of my system. Minato just smiled at that. Yeah. Your mother was the same way, she'd hit me too for making things difficult. Naruto chuckled slightly, remembering his encounter with his mother's clone. As for the reason I sealed half of the fox's power inside you, I believed you would be able to use its power should your situation ever require it, and there's another reason. Naruto stared at him as he trailed off, trying to find the words. You mean because of Kyuubi's former summoner? Yeah, him. The one that controlled Kyuubi when he attacked Konoha 16 years ago. Minato nodded in confirmation. He's a very powerful shinobi. It would be suicidal to fight him without some form of special power. He continued, remembering his fight with the man. I believe he'll attack Konoha again. He might even attack the entire world. It's well within his power. The Yondaime finished. Naruto shook his head at that. Konoha has already been destroyed. Minato nodded in understanding. Yeah, I saw, from the seal. Naruto looked up at him surprised. I know about Jiraiya too. Was Pain the one who sent the fox to attack Konoha before? Asked the Kitsune Sennin. No, not him. Do you remember the Akatsuki member you fought? The one with the mask? Minato asked knowingly. Flashback no jutsu begin. Naruto grabbed a hold of the older woman's shoulders and asked in an almost frightened tone, what was the summoner's name? Please tell me. Kushina shook her head. I don't know, we never got his name. We didn't even see his real face, he always wore a mask. Flashback no jutsu end. Naruto had only met one Akatsuki member who wore a mask, the one he couldn't seem to hit with anything other than his mother's sword. Yeah, I remember him, Naruto said, remembering his little skirmish with Akatsuki a month ago. Back before the attack, he saw through everything I did. He's no ordinary shinobi. He's easily one of the strongest men alive. Pain's probably being used by him, Minato said, sadly recalling his own battle with the seemingly untouchable man. But Pain hates Konoha. His own village was destroyed the same way. Naruto shouted, trying to understand what he had been told. That's right, and Pain is being used because of that fact, Minato told him. Being used? Are you telling me that this guy with the mask is the one responsible for everything that's happened? Is he the reason there is no peace? Naruto asked almost desperately. Yes, he's the one responsible, but it's people's hatred that is the reason there is no peace, Minato said sadly. Trying to save the things you love breeds war. As long as love exists, there will always be hatred, and ninjas will be used by that hatred. People's hatred will just create another creature like Pain. That's just the way things are, he finished. Then what do I do? Naruto asked as he clenched his fists. What can you do? Maybe as long as the ninja system exists, there can never be true peace or order. Pain asked you about peace, but it's hard to find an answer, Minato told him sadly. Naruto didn't say anything to that, but instead just stared at him wide-eyed. Naruto. What's wrong? It can't be that easy, Naruto said, trying to calm himself and not hyperventilate. But to do something like that, I would need the cooperation of every nation. The details would have to be hammered out completely with no gaps, but overall I think this plan of mine might actually work. Naruto calmed himself down and breathed. Naruto? Minato asked, concerned. Dad, you're a genius, was the first thing the Sennin said, having turned back to his father. Minato raised an eyebrow in surprise. I am. Naruto nodded with a grin that threatened to split his face. You said that as long as the ninja system exists, there can never be true peace. Power corrupts after all, so what if there was no longer any need for ninja? What would happen then? Minato looked at his son in surprise as he answered. Well, ninja wouldn't be used anymore and they'd just, fade. Exactly, Naruto said, grinned like a fox. Thank you, you just gave me the answer I've been looking for, Naruto said as he suddenly grabbed his father and hugged him. Well, okay, Minato said as the two pulled away and shrugged. Well, good luck with that, he said to his son. The only problem with it would be getting certain people to help. I'm not sure if Naruto was interrupted by his father putting his hand on his hair and rubbing it slightly. Minato looked at him with a smile with his hand still on his son's head. You'll define. I believe in you and I always will. Naruto grin turned into a small smile. You really think I can do it? Parents always believe in their children, Minato said with a grin. He brought his hand up to wear the seal on Naruto's stomach. Now, I have to be going, my chakra is fading. I'll restore the seal. You did a good job in finishing it, but you still need to work on controlling it better. I can only do this once. There will be no way to stop you if you lose control again. The seal was returned to normal in a matter of seconds as Naruto grunted in slight pain from the process. Konoha can be rebuilt, and so can the world. Minato smiled at him as he began to fade. I'm proud of you, Naruto, never forget that. He was gone a moment later. Dad, thanks. With closed eyes, Naruto's whisper echoed through the now silent room. He opened his eyes again with determination shining brightly in them. Let's go. Fire Country. Shibuku Tensei. Naruto's vertically slitted eyes snapped open as he looked around to see where he was. Hovering over the forest below, he appeared to be standing on a large sphere. A crater covered a quarter of it, however, the part he stood on, which was most likely from his recent usage of the eighth tail. He still wore his coat, however, having learned from the last time he used Kyuubi's chakra that only acid-resistant clothing were capable of surviving anything beyond the third tail. Did he find a way to control the fox's power? No, he just suppressed it, Pain thought as he looked up at the now shaking moon. He strained while holding up his hands, but it was useless. I can't hold Shibuku Tensei. This must be Pain's jutsu, Naruto thought as he felt the ground shake under him. It looks like he can't keep it up, he continued as the moon slowly dropped to the surface below a piece at a time. Oh shit, Naruto growled as the entire moon dropped to the ground and crashed with a monstrous echoing impact. He landed in a crouch on a makeshift hill unharmed. Am I in sage mode? How? It should be depleted. I was out of chakra. Did I recharge it? When? Is he already in sage mode? Pain thought as he caught his breath. He's stronger than I thought. I wanted to test the fox's power, but I never thought he'd be able to destroy Shibuku Tensei. Now I see how Kakuzu and Deidara were defeated by him, the Akatsuki leader thought as he pulled out one of his chakra disruption blades. I thought I was a goner. Katsuyu sighed relief as she climbed out of the coat pocket. What happened? Naruto asked as he looked to the side and saw the gouged out terrain which appeared to be in the direction of where Konoha once stood. You did that in Demon Fox mode, Katsuyu replied, causing his eyes to widen and his breathing to pick up slightly. Did I? Naruto trailed off as he tried to calm himself. No one was hurt by your attacks, though you did appear to have pushed Pain into a corner, Katsuyu reassured him. Everyone is okay. It was pure luck though, the slug finished. Thank God. Tears fell from Naruto's eyes as he smiled relieved. What about Yugito? Is she safe? He asked as he wiped away the tears. Your fox carried her to Tsunade-sama. She was able to heal the damage done to her, Katsuyu answered after a moment of checking with her other bodies. That's good, Naruto said with a small smile. Just wait a little longer, Yugito. I'll be there soon. His eyes hardened as he raised his head towards Pain. I think it's about time we finished this, Namikaze Naruto, spoke the Akatsuki leader. I believe in you and I always will. Do you understand pain a little now? If you don't share someone's pain, then you can never understand them. But just because you understand them doesn't mean you can come to an agreement. That's the truth, Pain stated as his eyes bore down on him haughtily. Naruto clenched his fist at his side. Take me to the real you. I want to speak to him face to face. Pain his sword at his side and spoke, so you figured it out. Naruto nodded. Yeah, I caught on when you stabbed me with that chakra sword of yours. It's a chakra receiver. You can transfer your chakra into people. Control them, disable them, and destroy them from the inside just like you did to me before. Pain just stood there staring at the blonde with an unreadable expression. You really are something else. It's no wonder that Jiraiya-sensei chose to train you. Your partner is really something too. Neither of you are normal Jinchuriki. That much is clear, but the time for talking is over. Let our actions speak for us. Let me talk to the real you, Naruto said again, trying to get the Akatsuki leader to cooperate. Pain ignored his request and said, "Your sage mode, it won't save you forever." He's right. I only have one chance to beat him. If sage mode is depleted then. Naruto shook his head as he saw his opponent charge at him with his chakra disruption blade at the ready. You asked me about peace. I will tell you my answer in person or not at all. He shouted as his sword appeared in his hand in a flash of light. You lose Namikaze Naruto. Pain shouted as he made to stab the blonde. Naruto parried the blow. Give up. Can I just say one thing? They clashed with their respective weapons. I don't want to hear it. Pain shouted as he broke through and made to stab the Kitsune Sennin. Shunpo no Jutsu, Naruto thought as he appeared behind Pain in a flash. Futon. Hein, white razor-like blades of wind appeared at the edges of his sword. You should give up. Pain turned swiftly having heard the whisper and raised his own weapon to block the coming attack only to have Naruto slice right through it. Thinking I'm gonna give up. What? Pain's eyes widened as his blade was destroyed. Futon. Rasengan. Naruto called out as he slammed his fist into Pain's face. He flew back from the blow having his face and crashed into the neighboring debris with monstrous force. I got you now, Pain. Shinra Tensei was barely able to deflect that last hit. Pain thought as he shakily stood and saw that Naruto had picked up the fallen piece of his blade. What's he doing? He thought as he watched the blonde hold it up to the sky. Chakra Nami. Naruto's flared in a massive column of blue and yellow. Shockwaves rippled across the entire battlefield. They weren't strong enough to do much damage, but they did their job. I see you. He's traced my chakra signature. Pain thought with widened eyes as he saw the blonde make a hand seal. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. 4 clones popped into existence beside him and began to charge 2 separate attacks in each hand. I have to dodge, thought the Akatsuki leader as he heard the distinctive sound, a constant ringing bell. Futon. Suin Rasenshuriken. Naruto called out as he twisted his body while holding both of the chakra shurikens. With one in each hand he gave a loud battle cry as he threw the 2 at him one after the other. He can actually control 2 of those monsters at once. Pain thought as he jumped to avoid the first one. He saw the second coming at him and brought his hand up to stop it. Shinra Tensei. The second one was instantly destroyed before it hit him as he landed on a nearby makeshift hill. That was close. He looked down at his opponent and his eyes widened when he saw the blonde had already finished charging 2 wind balls. Damn it. Futon. Kamikaze no Jutsu. Naruto's voice echoed through the area as he brought both wind balls together and unleashed the massive tornado it produced at Pain. The Akatsuki leader gritted his teeth as he brought his hands up to stop the attack. Shinra Tensei. Sage mode deactivated. The unstoppable wind met the law of gravity as the 2 attacks sent a cascade of shockwaves across the land. Entire sections of the neighboring forest were blown away by the power the 2 attacks gave off. After the 2 attacks died down, however, dust covered the area, negating Pain's ability to see. Where is he? Pain thought frantically and heard the bell-like screech he knew all too well. He looked up suddenly and his eyes widened as he saw Naruto was descending towards him with a bright white ball in his hand. 5 seconds. Futon. Rasengan. Naruto said as he swung down with his jutsu. Shinra Tensei. Pain called out having brought his hand up to stop the blonde. The 2 clashed with everything they had atop the platform-like pillar of rock that Pain had jumped on. Their attacks sent monstrous shockwaves everywhere. Rocks, boulders around them seemed to just split in 2 under the extreme pressure that had filled the area. At the very end of this there was an echoing sound of shattering glass as Naruto's jutsu was destroyed and Pain grabbed his arm. It's over, Namikaze Naruto, Pain told him, only for Naruto to chuckle slightly. Heh, 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 you fell for it, the blonde said with a grin as he brought his other hand out from behind his back in the jutsu it held. Pain's eyes widened. Those last 2 attacks were just diversions. Futon. Suin Rasengan. Naruto called out as he planted the spinning ball of wind into the Akatsuki leader's chest. Pain let out an almost deafening cry of pain as the ground below them cracked and crumbled. The attack that hit him seemed to drill into his skin before in one final moment he no longer felt the pain. Pain was blown back at high speeds with the attack still ripping apart his body as he traveled through the air. He hit the ground with monstrous force. The impact shattered all of the neighboring debris, which was soon followed by the sound of a deafening explosion. And with that, the Diva Path had been defeated. Naruto hit the ground a moment later and ended up sprawled across the dirt. He was breathing extra hard, having used up everything he had on that last strike. He put everything he had into that last blow and knew if that wasn't enough, then nothing would be. He had better be dead after that last hit, Naruto thought as he shakily stood. Are you alright? Katsuyu asked, concerned. I've never been better, Naruto said as he calmed himself down. He slowly made his way over to where Pain had fallen while trying not to drop from exhaustion at any moment, almost there. He soon found himself standing over the battered and bruised Diva Path. He was still relatively intact but had a large gaping hole in his chest now thanks to Naruto's last attack. Naruto didn't say a word as he removed the numerous chakra receivers the Diva Path had in his body. After the last receiver was taken out, the Kitsune Sennin just stared at Diva's face, thinking over everything that had happened. Naruto closed his eyes and held up one of the chakra receivers, Chakra Nami. His chakra flared again and after a moment he tossed the receiver away. I need to meet him. You're really going? You should take reinforcements, Katsuyu said as Naruto put her down on the ground. No, I'm going alone, Naruto responded and bit his thumb. He made several hand seals and then slammed his open palm into the ground. Kuchio's no jutsu, Sakino no Kitsune. In a poof of smoke, Sakino appeared in front of him. Hey Sakino-chan. Naruto-kun, did you win? The fox asked. That doesn't matter right now. I need a lift, Naruto said as he hefted the Diva Path onto his shoulder. Where do you need to go? Sakino asked as her summoner climbed onto her back. To the top of that mountain, Naruto replied as he pointed at the nearby mountain a little over a mile away. Fast or slow? The fox asked him. Very fast, Naruto told her, and her tails begun to spin behind her at an extreme pace. I hear you, she told him, and a sonic boom they were off at an incredible speed. Good luck Naruto-san, Katsuyu whispered seeing him leave. Fire Country. Konoha Crater. Naruto has defeated the sixth Pain, Katsuyu informed the assembled group. Everyone immediately snapped their attention to the medium-sized slug with various reactions to the news. Dobi. Sasuke thought angrily. He did it. Lee practically cheered. What happened? Neji asked. Naruto threw everything he had at Pain and beat him, the slug answered. Is he alright? Sakura asked, relieved at the outcome. He's exhausted but he's otherwise fine, Katsuyu answered based on her observations. He actually did it, Tsunade said with a small smile gracing her lips. Where is he now? Kakashi asked, wanting to know what his former student was doing. Katsuyu answered immediately. Right now he's head to where the real Pain is hiding. That's reckless. We have to go after him, Neji spoke up and turned to Guy, who nodded at him. But he doesn't want any help, Katsuyu said, catching their attention again. No way. He can't do this alone. He's already weakened, Neji said in disbelief. That's funny considering you all could barely even touch Pain and Naruto took him down by himself. Alone, Yugito smirked at the arrogance the Hyuga Jonin had just displayed. And what would you know, Kumo Nin? Neji asked, activating his Byakugan. Yugito chose not answer as she stood up a moment later and immediately jumped on Rei's back. Rei, we need to get to him now. Very well, Yugito Dono. The horse-sized cat nodded and took off towards Katana Mountain before anyone could stop her. Fire Country. Katana Mountain, Conan's hideaway. Atop the mountain towered a tree made of papers which offered protection from forces outside. Sakino stopped just short of it and allowed her summoner to dismount. Naruto nodded to her as he hefted the Diva Path onto his shoulder again and watched as Sakino disappeared in a poof of smoke a moment later. He set the body down on the ground just and approached the paper tree. In one swift motion he dug his hands inside of it and pulled the papers apart to create an opening. Knock knock. Anyone home? Asked the Kitsune Sennin as he looked inside and spotted two individuals. One appeared to be in some kind of walking chair. Naruto turned a moment later and picked Diva up again before carrying him inside. The hole closed behind him and he approached the two. One was female with blue hair. She stood off to the right but moved in front of the other in the chair as the Kitsune Sennin approached them. Stand back, Conan, the one in the chair spoke. He was clearly male and appeared to have large chakra receivers coming out of his skin. He looked like he hadn't eaten in days either, like he had been starved. All you could see of him was his skin and bone. He appeared frail, like if he were to leave the chair and stand up he would die. Nagato, Conan asked over her shoulder. Are you the real one? Naruto asked the man in the chair. Nagato. Nagato nodded and stared at the blonde. So, peace has arrived, After a bit more staring he asked, do you hate me? Now that you see me before you, will you take your revenge? Will you kill me? For the record, I've killed you 7 times already. Naruto shot back as he dropped Diva at Nagato's feet and Conan picked him up. A moment later, you asked me about peace and I'm here to deliver my answer. My plan is the only way to achieve any sense of peace, Nagato said as a chakra receiver seemed to launch from the chair and struck Naruto in the shoulder. He remained standing however as Nagato continued, your role is to be the sacrifice that will allow me to bring peace to the world. That is the right answer, no other. Naruto grunted in pain from the blow, at this range I can easily control you with my chakra. You shouldn't underestimate me. Naruto shouted at him as he pulled the receiver out and shrugged off Nagato's chakra. How? Nagato asked in thought since no one had ever been able to resist his attack at this range before. That's when he caught sight of the boy's eyes. They were still slitted like we're normally in sage mode, but there was a red line around the eye's natural blue color. He's using both his sage mode and Kyuubi's chakra at the same time. Impossible. The concentration needed to perform such a task is ridiculous, bordering on ludicrous. I came here to talk you, to give you my answer, but I also wanted to find out what I would feel if I really saw you, Naruto said looking down and shaking slightly. You wanted to, Ayan? Nagato asked with widened eyes. I really want to kill you, Naruto answered as killing intent flooded the room. They just stood there for a moment staring at one another. I want to kill you so much I'm trembling. For what you did to Ero Sennin, for what you did to Konoha, for what you did to Yugito. You can't forgive me, you're only human after all, Nagato said as his eyes seemed to soften slightly. Sage mode deactivated. Yeah, but Ero Sennin he said the day would come when people would truly understand each other. He had faith, you have none, Naruto said as his eyes returned to normal and he set his sage mode on recharge. It's too late for Jiraiya's idealism now, that's just not realistic. You are working for your own justice and that's fine. You're not God, but can you really believe Jiraiya's nonsense after seeing the reality? Nagato asked him. Naruto shook his head. When I found out you were his student there was something I really wanted to ask you. If you were his student then how did you turn out like this? I mean Ero Sennin had other students. One was my father and I know for a fact he did everything within his power to protect people no matter who they were. How did you end up like this? I want to hear your side of the story before I give you my answer. Alright, I'll tell you of our pain, Nagato said with a sigh. Conan looked over at him and spoke, Nagato, that's just a waste of time. Just hurry up and wait Conan, I want to hear his answer, Nagato interrupted. He closed his eyes as he spoke to Naruto, I have 2 sources of pain. One is my parents' death. It was in the midst of the Second Great Shinobi War. 2 Konoha shinobi came into our home one day looking for food. They didn't know anyone was in and we hid from them. We were afraid that they might kill us. When we tried to sneak away I knocked over a vase by accident and it alerted the Konoha nins to our presence. They thought we're their enemy and tried to kill us. Father tried to hold them off but I see. Naruto nodded in understanding. That's when my Rinnegan awakened. I slaughtered the 2 Konoha nins in a daze. I didn't even know what happened until the next morning. My mother and father died for a war Konoha started. I can never forget the pain of that day, it still hurts even now. As the pain turned to hatred, my powers bloomed within me. Later I would realize that it was I that had killed those Konoha nins. I buried my parents at the nearby graveyard. Even ninja respect the dead so I knew they wouldn't be disturbed. I said my goodbyes and left home alone with only a few provisions, enough to keep me alive for a day or two. I traveled around and asked for some food from the neighbors but they couldn't spare any food. I soon grew hungry and came across a dog that wouldn't stop following me. I called him Tiny and we kept traveling but I knew we couldn't last much longer. That's when Conan saved me. She saved us, Nagato said as he turned to the other Akatsuki member and she smiled sadly at him. I offered him some bread, he split it between him and Tiny. After that I took them to the hideout that Yahiko and I used, Conan continued. Who's Yahiko? Naruto asked, having never heard of the man. Conan looked down at Diva and replied. This Diva path was constructed using Yahiko's corpse. That's Yahiko. Naruto trailed off as he stared at Diva's lifeless form. Yes, he is. Back then is when we first met. We were all war orphans, but they were trying desperately to stay alive. They became my friends. We stole a lot in order to survive. There were no orphanages in a small war-torn country like ours. There was nothing else kids like us could do. But through it all, Yahiko never gave up hope. He wanted to rule the world and bring peace to it in order to stop war. Not long after, he told us that we were caught up in a fight. A kunai with an explosive tag detonated right in front of us. Tiny was. Nagato shook his head, remembering his first friend. He died, Naruto said, looking to the side. Yes, the ones fighting, however, it was Jiraiya and them, the Sannin. They were fighting Hanzo, the former leader of a Megakure. Afterwards we set out trying to find some ninja in hopes of getting some training and becoming stronger so we could stop bad things from happening to those we care about again. That's when we found him, Jiraiya. I couldn't accept any Konoha nins, you should understand that. He saw Naruto nod slightly, so he continued. Jiraiya, however, was different. Not long after the four of us began living together, something happened. What happened? Naruto asked, wanting to know. A lone ninja attacked us. He nearly killed Yahiko, but I fought back. I did it unconsciously. Apparently I had some special power. It was the Rinnegan. Afterwards Jiraiya began teaching us ninjutsu. He wasn't keen on teaching us those before but decided to anyways. He said they were for self-defense, but I think they were mainly a way for me to control the Rinnegan. I was scared of my own powers back then. I was filled with hatred. I was tormented by guilt and kept thinking that I had done something wrong. He saved me, and without realizing it I came to accept him. However, despite this he could never discover the answer to eliminating hatred and pain. Not like us, but I knew the answer right away. I just wanted to protect those close to me no matter how much pain is caused. Nagato paused, letting Naruto assimilate everything he had said. You wanted to protect your precious people, Naruto said softly, remembering the words of his first real friend. Do you have someone precious to you? After 3 years of training we'd grown stronger in body and mind, but his words stayed within my heart. He said he felt that my Rinnegan could be the answer. He felt that I was the reincarnation of the Sage of Six Paths, the founder of the shinobi world. Jiraiya entrusted me with that piece and then left us. Yahiko became our leader soon after, and our gang grew famous overnight. Everyone agreed with our desire to create peace without relying on brute force, but the world was still the middle of a war between the three great powers, Iwa, Suna and Konoha. Hanzo, the leader of a Megakure, heard the rumors about us, and since he could no longer ignore us, wanted to use us to begin peace negotiations between the three great nations. But that was a catastrophe. We were just children. Nagato's fists clenched in anger. What happened? Naruto asked, concerned. Because of him Yahiko died. It was a trap. Hanzo was afraid we'd wrestle control of a Megakure away from him and so decided to eliminate us. The next day when we arrived at the assigned place, Konoha's Black Ops were waiting for us along with Hanzo and his minions. Hanzo had joined forces with Konoha's Danzo to destroy us. Danzo wanted Hanzo's help in becoming Hokage, and Hanzo wanted Danzo's help in protecting his position. Hanzo held Conan hostage and told me kill Yahiko or he would kill her. Yahiko was killed by me a few seconds later, and that is the second source of pain I have. I thought I had grown up, but nothing had changed. It was just the same as when my parents had died. I realized that the answer I had was worthless. I managed to free Conan and wreak havoc on the Konoha and AIM forces. Yahiko was dead though, and after that I became the leader of our gang in his stead. I lost many friends in battle after that, so many people just kept dying. People in the larger countries talk about peace, yet they hypocritically fund wars. Their peace is built on the sacrifices of the smaller countries, your peace is violence towards us. There can never be true peace in this cursed land. What Jiraiya spoke of was nothing more than a fantasy. You've heard my story, so let me hear your answer, Nagato finished. What you said may be true. I think you're right, Naruto whispered, looking down, having heard everything he needed to. He put his hand in his coat and pulled out a small book that Nagato seemed to recognize, however. Conan looked on confused, not recognizing it but clearly seeing the effect it was having on Nagato. If you recognize this, then you also know it is another path for you to take. All you have to do is believe. I refuse, Nagato said instantly, having not taken his eyes off of the book in Naruto's hand. How can I believe Jiraiya now? That book doesn't mean anything. There's no such thing as real peace. It's impossible as long as we're living in this accursed world. Then, I will break the curse. If there's such a thing as peace, I will find it. I won't give up. I already know how I'm going to try and do it, Naruto told him. Nagato trailed off surprised. What's wrong, Nagato? Conan asked worried. My answer is this. I will unite the world under one banner. One country, one military, one ruler, one lord, Naruto told him, making both him and Conan go wide-eyed. My plan is to bring all of the nations together, unite them all and then completely obliterate the ninja system from existence, he continued. You're going to try and erase everything the Sage of Six Paths set out to do? Nagato asked as he stared at the blonde. Naruto nodded. Power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. If I destroy all records of ninja, erase their entire existence from history, then only civilians and the samurai would remain. This would stabilize the region, right? Nagato nodded in response. Yes, it would, but to pull off something like that you would need the cooperation of every country. Naruto smiled at that. Yeah. I guess I've got my work cut out for me, huh? Nagato trailed off. Believe in me and I promise you, I'll bring peace to Omegakure too, Naruto told him. We studied under the same teacher. I told you before that we should be able to understand each other. I was just joking back then, but you're an odd kid. You remind me of myself when I was younger. You're different. You chose a different path and in you I can see a different future. I will believe in you, Namikaze Naruto, Nagato said, chuckling slightly. Nagato? Conan asked, confused slightly. It's over, Conan. My body is at its limit. I will be dead in minutes, Nagato told her before he turned back to Naruto. Listen carefully, Naruto. There is someone you must watch out for. He is a very powerful shinobi. He is almost without equal, he told the blonde. Naruto nodded. I already know. The Akatsuki member. The one with the mask, he said, surprising the two. Nagato nodded slowly. His name is Uchiha Madara and he is the Sandaime Mizukage. Naruto's eyes widened slightly. Okay, that I did not know. He was defeated by the last Sanbi Jinchuriki, Yagura, Nagato told him. Naruto looked up at him surprised. Jinchuriki. How did Madara lose? From what I'm told, not even my parents were able to beat that guy. Yagura had full control over his Biju. He was able to use it to defeat Madara and became the Yondaime Mizukage nearly 12 years ago, Nagato stated. Naruto looked at the ground trying to process what he had just heard. The Yondaime Mizukage, is he